Welcome to Pact Publishing's video course on building an app UI with PrimeFaces. This section will explain everything you need to know to get started. We'll cover how to install and set up NetBeans and a Mongo database. The requirements are that you already have a Java JDK 7 installed on your PC and WinZip or an equivalent unzipping tool. We need to download and install a couple of things before we can start the PrimeFaces tutorial. We'll get started in the next video. Go to NetBeans webpage at netbeans.org. Click on the download button on the main page. Choose your language and platform. I will choose English and Windows for this tutorial. I normally download everything, so click on the download button in the all column. And we will be using NetBeans version 8 for this tutorial. Save the file in a location where you will be able to find it again. Make sure to save it locally. I've noticed that the file doesn't run sometimes when you save it remotely and try and execute it. When the download is finished, go to the location where you saved the file, double click on the file. The installation window will open shortly. If the window pops up asking if you want to allow this program to make changes, just click yes. The installation will continue. Click on the Customize button to customize your installation. Then select Tomcat and Glassfish to install. We will only use Tomcat in this tutorial. When you start using more complex features, it'll be nice to have Glassfish ready. Note the installation size with the full NetBeans and the 2 servers. Click OK. Click Next. Accept terms and conditions. Click Next. More terms and conditions, click Next. Make sure to keep all the directories the same. Just keep on clicking Next until you get to the last page and then click Install. Go to the Mongo webpage at mongodb.org. Click on the Downloads menu on the main page. Choose the production release version 2.4.9. In this tutorial, we will use the Windows 64-bit edition. Click on the download button. Your download should start soon. Save the file to a location where you will be able to find it again. When the download is finished, go to the location where you saved the file and open it with WinZip or your favorite unzipping tool. Unzip the contents to the local file system. I'm going to unzip it to util Mongo. When all the files are unzipped, go to the bin directory. Mine is in util Mongo bin. Create a file called startmongo.bat. Edit the file and enter the following information. MongoD space -- db path equals c:\util /mongo /bin /data /db. Make sure to get your case correct. Save and close the file. This file will be used to start the Mongo database. Create a folder inside the bin named Data. Go into Data and create a folder named DB. Go back to the bin directory. Double-click on the new file to start the Mongo database. If a window pops up asking to allow the program through the firewall, just click Allow Access. Go to MongoVue.com to download GUI for the Mongo database. Click on the download button on the main page. The download page will open up. Click on the download button. Your download should start soon. Save the file to a location where you will be able to find it again. When the download is finished, go to the location where you saved the file and open it with WinZip or your favorite unzipping tool. Double-click the file inside the zip. When the installation window opens up, just click Next on all the pages. Click on the Windows Start button, click on All Programs. Scroll down to the MongoVue folder and open it. Click on MongoVue. Click OK on the message box that appears explaining that this is a free edition. In the Connect window, click the green plus sign on the right hand side. Enter the name as localhost. Enter the server as localhost. Leave the port 27017 and click on Test. It should say that the connection was successful. Just click OK. Click Save, and then on the next window make sure to click on localhost and click Connect. We are now connected to the local Mongo database. You can click around and see what is available. At some point in time, you will want to deploy your application to a server on the web. Your service provider might not have the ability to supply a MongoDB. I will now show you how to create an online MongoDB account and connect to it using MongoVue. Go to the MongoLab webpage at mongolab.com. Click the Sign Up button and enter your details for the new account. Make sure to store the details you enter for the new account because you will need it in this tutorial. You will also need to read the agreement before clicking on the Create Account button. After clicking on the Create Account button, a window will appear showing you your databases, servers, and remote connections. Click on the Create New button to create a new database. On this page, choose the development single node because we want to use the free plan, and enter a database name. Click on the Create New MongoDB deployment. We now have an online database. Click on the name of the database and note the URI of the database on the next page. The database still needs a user. Click on the line that explains this. Enter the database user and password. Make sure to note this down because you will need it. Click on the Create button when you're done. Make sure you're not behind a proxy server blocking your connection. I have noticed that MongoVue has some issues with proxies. Go back to MongoVue. Click Connect and click on the green plus sign on the right hand side. Enter the name as remote, the server name from the website. Copy the port number from the website. Enter the username, password, and database that you created earlier in this tutorial. Click on Test. It should say that the connection was successful. Click OK and click Save. Click on Remote and click Connect. We are now connected locally and remotely. We will now copy data from local to remote. Right-click on localhost and click on Add Database. Enter the database name as Test. Open up Test. Right-click on Test and click on Add Collection. Enter the collection name as Person and click OK. Make sure the collection name was all in lowercase. Right-click on Person and click Insert Document. Provide the JSON test values, your name and your surname. When you're done, click the Insert button. Right-click on Person and click Copy Collection to Different Server. Select the remote server and select the database that is available. Click on Copy. When a message box displays showing the copy was successful, just click OK. Click on the remote connection and refresh. You will now see the copy data that is actually on a remote server. This section explained how to install NetBeans, MongoDB, and MongoVue. We also copied data from the local Mongo database to remote Mongo database using MongoVue. In the next section, we will create our first web application using Spring, Mongo, and PrimeFaces. Welcome to Pact Publishing's video course on building an app UI with PrimeFaces. This section will explain everything you need to build the first web application. We'll cover how to create the web application in NetBeans. The tutorial will show you how to configure the web application as a JSF 2.2 web application. We will also show how to configure the Maven script to automatically download PrimeFaces, Mongo, and Spring. Run the NetBeans that was installed in the previous tutorial. When NetBeans opens, click on the File menu and then the New Project submenu. The New Project window will open up. Click on the Maven item in the Categories list on the left side. The list of available types of projects will be displayed on the right-hand side. Click on the Web application and click the Next button. Please wait while NetBeans configures itself for a web application. Name the tutorial Pact Prime UI Demo and leave the rest of the settings as they are. Please note the location of the project. Click the Next button when done. Make sure the selected server is Apache Tomcat and the Java EE version should be Java EE 7 Web. If your drop-down doesn't display Java EE 7 Web, select Java EE 6 Web for now. Click the Finish button when done. NetBeans will create the new Maven web application. Right-click on the project name and click Run on the menu. NetBeans will download the required packages, compile the project, and deploy it automatically to Tomcat. NetBeans will open a web browser automatically and display your brand new web application. Please note the URL and the port that NetBeans has set up. While NetBeans deploys your web application, your firewall might show a message box. Just click on the Allow Access for NetBeans. Right-click on the running Tomcat and click on the Properties menu item. All the properties for the server will pop up, including the port that NetBeans has set up for you. Stop the server that's running by right-clicking on it and clicking on the Stop menu item. You can also close the server by going to the Windows Task Manager, finding Java, and ending the process in cases where the server doesn't shut down through NetBeans. One way to test whether your server has been shut down is by opening a web browser and going to the local web server. If you forgot to note down the port, then go to NetBeans, right-click on the server and click Properties. The server properties will open up. On the first page is a server port number. In this case it is 8084, but most of the time it would be 8080. Select the Projects tab in NetBeans. Right-click on the project and click on Properties. The Project Properties window will pop up. Click on the Frameworks item on the left side and click on the Add button on the right side of the screen. In the Framework window, select Java Server Faces and click OK. It will take a couple of seconds to configure, and then JSF 2.2 will display in the drop-down. Click on the Components tab and select PrimeFaces. Click OK. The project has been configured as a JSF 2.2 PrimeFaces project now. Go to the web.inf directory under Web Pages. Right-click web.inf and select New and then Other. The new document window will pop up. Select Java Server Faces in the Categories list and select JSF Faces configuration in the file types on the right. Click Next. On the next page, make sure the file name is faces-config.xml and that it is in the web.inf directory. Click Finish when done. Add the Spring Bean Faces EL resolver to the Faces config XML. Edit the file web.xml in a web.inf directory. Change the URL pattern that has /faces/* in it to star.jsf, and then change the welcome file to index.jsf and save the file. Select the Projects tab in NetBeans and open the newly created project. Open the folder named Project Files. Double-click on the file named pom.xml. This will open the POM file that Maven uses to build the project. Add the PrimeFaces version number to the POM in the Properties section. Scroll down a bit and change the version of the PrimeFaces to point to the version defined in the Properties section. Add Commons file upload version number to the POM in the Properties section. Create the dependency to Commons file upload. Open the project folder Web Pages and then the web.inf folder. Open the web.xml file. Add the context param to ignore comments in the file and then save the file. You can enter proxy information in NetBeans by clicking on the menu item Tools and then Options. Click on the General tab. On the General tab, you can enter proxy details if required. Right-click on the project and select Clean and Build. This will download the PrimeFaces library and the file upload library if your proxy server or firewall isn't blocking NetBeans. Edit the POM in project files. Add the aspect.j version number to the POM in the Properties section. Add the aspect.j dependencies in the Dependencies section. Copy and paste the dependency section. Again, it's a lot less work if you don't have to type in the group ID, artifact ID, and version number. Make sure to copy and paste your version number from the Properties section. This makes 100% sure that you do not have any spelling mistakes. Add the Spring version numbers to the POM in the Properties section. Add the Spring dependencies in the Dependencies section. Make sure to use the correct version number with the correct dependency, and then save the file. When entering the details for the dependency, NetBeans will help you by auto-completing the group ID, artifact ID, and version number. In our case, we do not want to accept the auto-completed version number. Our version number will come from the version numbers defined in the Properties section. When entering the version, start with a $sign and a curly bracket, and then enter the version name as defined in the Properties section, and then a closing bracket. When adding artifacts that start with the same name, as in Spring hyphen, only delete the last part. It's less work to just type in a little bit of the name, and NetBeans will help you with the autocomplete, as you can see. Open other sources and right-click on Source Main Resources. Click on New and Other. The new file window will pop up. Scroll down and select XML on the left and select XML document on the right. Click Next. Change the name of the document to Application Context and click Next when done. The document will automatically be saved as a .xml file, so make sure not to add .xml in the name. On the next screen, just click Finish. Replace the contents of the XML file with the application context.xml of the tutorial, and then save the file. Note the tag that contains the component scan. This is very important. If your Spring managed beans cannot be found by the web pages, probably made a mistake here. More on that later. Open the web pages folder and then web.inf. Open the web.xml file. Add the context param to it so that Spring can load the application context.xml. Add Spring listeners just below the context param. Save the file when done. Edit the POM in project files. Add the Mongo version number to the POM in the properties section. Add the Spring Mongo version number to the POM in the properties section. Add the cglib version to the POM in the properties section. Add the dependencies to Mongo, Spring Mongo, and cglib in the dependencies section. Save the file when done. The Maven dependency consists of a group ID, artifact ID, and a version. The group ID will identify the project uniquely across all projects. A naming schema is enforced. It has to follow the package name rules. The artifact ID is the name of the jar without the version. The version is any typical version with numbers and dots. Open the folder Other Sources and then the folder Source Main Resources. Open application context.xml and enter the Mongo repository details. We will comment out the details for now until we create our first DAO. Save the file when done. We set the base package to the location of where our DAOs are saved, so that the Mongo Spring framework knows where to find the DAO that is then listed as a repository. The person DAO will be the repository used in this application. Right-click on the project and select Clean and Build. This will download the libraries if your proxy server or firewall isn't blocking NetBeans. Right-click on the project and click on Debug. The project will deploy to the web server and open a new web page. This section explained how to create a basic web application in NetBeans that compiles using Maven. We then upgraded the web application. Welcome to Pact Publishing's video course on building an app UI with PrimeFaces. In this section, we will upgrade the very basic web page to a nicer looking web page using some of the PrimeFaces components. Right-click on the name of the project and click Debug. NetBeans will build the project and deploy it to Tomcat and display the web page. Do not close the web page. Go to NetBeans and find the file called index.xml. It will be in the web pages part of the project. Double-click on the file. The contents of the file will be displayed on the right-hand side in NetBeans. Add the PrimeFaces namespace to the top of the file in the HTML section. This will allow you to use PrimeFaces components. As with any facelet tag, the UI components must live inside of a facelet tag library, which must be declared with an XML namespace declaration. In this case, xmlns:p equals. The characters after xmlns:, but before the equal sign, are arbitrary, but because those same characters must be used throughout the page to refer to components from the library, it's a good idea to keep it short. In this case, we use p. Whenever you want to use PrimeFaces components, you will need to prefix it with a p. We will first add the layout component to the web page. It will be configured so that we have a header, center, and a footer. Add the layout component between the body tags. Create the layout unit with position north. That will become the header. Create a layout unit with position south. That will become our footer. Create a third layout unit with position center. Save the file and go to the web page that NetBeans opened previously and refresh the page. The new layout should be visible. Let's add some data entry fields in a panel grid. First, create a panel grid with 4 columns inside the center layout. Inside the panel grid, create a PrimeFaces output label. Set the for attribute to first name, all lowercase, and give it a value of first name. Create the PrimeFaces input text with an ID of first name, all lowercase. Create another PrimeFaces output label. Set the for attribute to surname, all lowercase, and give it a value of surname. Create the PrimeFaces input text with an ID of surname, all lowercase. Save the file and go have a look at it in the web browser by refreshing the web page. Since the screen will be a search screen, we need a button to start a search. Go back to NetBeans and add a PrimeFaces command button with a value of search. The PrimeFaces command button automatically uses Ajax when it submits data, so only a partial update or re-render will take effect on the page. Any component that sends data back to the server, like the button, needs to be in the form. Make sure when you create the form tag to use the JSF version and not the HTML version. It is also very important never to nest form tags. If you have some kind of strange bug, first see if you don't wrap form tags. Also make sure to have form tags inside the layout unit and don't add a form around the layout. When adding a form around the layout, the web page will not work properly. Now wrap the whole panel grid in a JSF form tag. Save the file and have a look at it in the web browser. Any search needs a search result. We will now create a data table that will contain the search results. Go back to NetBeans and create a new data table in the center layout under the previous form tag. Inside the data table, create a column tag with the header text of first name. Inside the column tag, create an output text tag with an empty value. Create a second column tag in the data table with the header text of surname. Create an output text tag inside the column tag. Leave the value empty. Wrap the whole data table in a JSF form tag. We will not submit any data at this point, but when the time comes, the form will already be there and things will just work. Now we need a manage bean for the web page so that the page will actually do something when the button is clicked. Go to the package, right-click it, click New and then Java class. The new Java class window will pop up. Enter the class name as person search bean. Add .web.bean to the package name. Click on Finish when done. Remember that this package name should be the package name defined in the component scan tag in the application context file. We will add more to the person search bean class. The web page will be able to execute methods on it. Add the annotations, add controller, and add scope above the name of the class. NetBeans might show a message box to import the correct classes, copied and pasted the code. Make sure the correct classes are shown. It should be org, Spring Framework, Web Context, Web Application Context, Scope Request for the Scope Request, and org, Spring Framework, Context, Annotation, Scope for the Scope, and org, Spring Framework, Stereotype Controller for the controller. If you typed in the code, right-click and select Fix Imports. Make sure to select the correct packages mentioned before. Implement the serializable interface by adding implements Java IO serializable after the class name. This will mean the web server will be able to serialize the object and you will not receive a Java IO not serializable exception at runtime. You now have a Spring Manage bean the web page will be able to find and call methods on. Create a simple test method in the person search bean called test and print out the text test. Save the bean when done. You will notice the project is deployed automatically. This can sometimes cause some problems. If you have problems with this, right-click on the project name and click Properties. Click on the Run in the window that opens up and unselect Deploy on Save. Click OK. Now when you change code, you will need to deploy manually. Web page changes will still deploy automatically. Left-click on the line number on the line where you printed the word test. You should see a red line appear. That is a breakpoint. The application will stop at that point when the button is pressed. Go to the index file and go to the command button. Add the action code to call the test method. Add the attribute action to the PrimeFaces command button. In the action, start with a hash sign and then open and close curly brackets. The hash with two curly brackets is called expression language. This allows the presentation layer to communicate with the managed beans where the application logic is written. Move the cursor between the brackets and press Ctrl space. NetBeans will display a lot of information. Find a class named person search bean. You will notice the name starts with a lowercase p. The value of the name attribute is taken to be the managed bean name. If the value of the name attribute is unspecified, an empty string, the managed bean name is derived from taking the unqualified class name portion of the fully qualified class name and converting the first character to lowercase. Select person bean by pressing enter. Type a dot and you will see all the available methods. Select the method test. If there are no brackets after the method name, it means you are calling a method without any parameters or you are calling a get property on the bean. If you have empty brackets, it means you are calling a specific method and not passing any parameters to the method. Go to the web page, refresh the screen and click search. NetBeans will stop on the test method because we have a breakpoint on the test method and we are in debug mode in NetBeans. Go to NetBeans and press F5 to continue or proceed with the application. At some point in your life, you're going to think it is a good idea to debug the production server at your company. You will debug the server, forget the breakpoints in there and go to lunch. When you come back, everybody will be trying to figure out why the production server is broken. Just don't say anything and press F5. That has never happened to me, really. This section explained how to add PrimeFaces components to a web page, create a Spring managed bean that can be called from the web page, and then call a method on the Spring managed bean. In the next section, we will create Spring services and data access classes that will supply the data to the screen. Welcome to Pack Publishing's video course on building an app UI with PrimeFaces. In this section, we will create the Spring and Mongo classes that will be used by the web pages. Open Sources Packages and right-click on the package. Click New and then Java class. The new Java class window will pop up. Enter the class name as person. Enter the package name as com.mycompany packed prime UI demo.model. Click Finish when done. Create 3 private class variables of type string with the names ID, first name, and surname. Press Enter a couple of times to make space, and then press Alt plus Insert or right-click and select Insert Code. Select Getter and Setter from the menu that pops up. Select the variables in the window and click Generate. This will create getters and setters for the variables. Create a constructor that will generate and set the ID automatically using the random UUID method on the UUID class. Add the class annotation add document above the name of the class. The add document annotation identifies a domain object to be persisted to MongoDB. Also add @ID above the ID field. This will become the primary key field. Press Ctrl-Shift-I. The Fix All Imports box will pop up. Select org.springframework.data.mongodb.core.mapping.document and org.springframework.data.annotation.id and click OK to accept the imports. Now we need a managed bean for the admin web page so that the page will actually add data when the add button is clicked. Right-click on the .web.bean package. Click New and then Java class. The new Java class window will pop up. Enter the class name as person admin bean. Click Finish when done. Remember, the package name should also be the package name defined in the application context.xml in the component scan tag. Add the annotations @controller and @scope above the name of the class so that the web page will be able to call methods from it. Press Ctrl-Shift-I and the Fix All Imports box will pop up. Make sure to select org.springframework.web.context.webApplicationContext.scope for the scope request and org.springframework.context.annotation.scope for the scope and org.springframework.stereotype.controller for the controller. Click OK if the correct imports are displayed. Implement the serializable interface by adding implements java.io.serializable after the class name. This will mean the web server will be able to serialize the object and you will not receive java.io.notserializable exceptions at runtime. You now have a managed bean that the admin web page will be able to find and call methods from. Right-click on any package. Click New and then Java class. The new Java class window will pop up. Enter the class name as person service. Enter the package name as com.mycompany.packedprimeUIDemo.service. Click on Finish. The class now has to be changed so that it can be injected into person admin bean. Add the annotation @service above the class name. Press Ctrl-Shift-I and the Fix All Imports box will pop up. Make sure to select org.springframework.stereotype.service and click OK to accept the imports. Open application context.xml. It is located other sources and in source main resources. Add the package of the service to the scan. Right-click on any package. Click New and then Other. The new file window will pop up. Select Java and then Java Interface and click Next. The new Java Interface window will pop up. Enter the interface name as person.dio. Enter the package name as com.mycompany.packedprimeuidemo.dio. Click Finish. The interface needs to extend the interface Mongo repository. Pass person and string to the generic declaration of Mongo repository. The Mongo repository allows you to find all data and save the object, so you don't need to implement those methods. The first parameter of the generic declaration is the object that will be saved or retrieved, and the second is the primary key. Press Ctrl-Shift-I to import the correct packages. Add the annotation at repository above the name of the class. Press Ctrl-Shift-I and import org.springframework stereotype.repository. Copy the DAO package and then open application context.xml. Add the new package to the DAO scan. The Spring Mongo classes also need to know about the new DAO. Add the new DAO to the Mongo repositories section in application context. Right-click on any package, click on New and then Java class. Enter the class name as Spring Mongo config and change the package to com.mycompany.packedprimeuidemo.config. Click Finish when done. Copy the contents of the class from the tutorial. Make sure the Mongo HQ URL and database name point to your local MongoDB. Our search screen will need to search by first name or surname or both, so add the finder methods to the DAO. Create the find by first name method. Annotate the method with @query. The $0 in the @query annotation is a placeholder that lets you substitute the value from the method arguments. The parameter to the annotation tells the code which field on the person class will be used to compare with the parameter passed to the method. Import the annotation using Ctrl-Shift-I. Choose org.springframework.data.mongodb.repository.query. Create the find by surname method in the same way. Just change the parameter to surname. Make sure to spell everything in exactly the same way as defined in person class. Create the find by first name surname method in the same way as above, but this time pass in first name and surname. The second parameter will be $1. The DAO is now ready to be used. It will be able to save the person, find all, and find for specific fields. The DAO needs to be injected into the person service. Open the person service class and inject the person DAO by declaring a class variable named person DAO of type person DAO and then annotate it with @resource. Press Ctrl-Shift-I and import the classes person DAO and javafx.annotation.resource. Press Enter. Create methods in the person service class that will allow the web page to perform certain actions. Copy all the method signatures from the DAO, make them public, and in the implementation of the methods, just call the methods of the DAO and return the results. Create the find by ID, save, and find all methods. Find by ID accepts the ID of the person and it calls the find one method on the DAO. The save method will accept a person and the find all will return a list of person objects. Open the person admin bean class and inject the person service by declaring a class variable named person service of type person service and then annotate it with add resource. Press Ctrl-Shift-I and import person service and javax.annotation.resource. Press enter. Add methods in person admin bean. Call find by ID, find all, and save on the person service. Name the methods the same as they are on person service. Inject person service into person search bean by copying the person service declaration from person admin bean into person search bean. The import classes box will pop up automatically. Make sure to import person service from this tutorial and javax.annotation.resource. Add a method named search on person search bean. This method will be executed from the search button on the screen. Add class variables named first name and surname of type string to person search bean. Also add a class variable named person list of type list that accepts person objects to person search bean. Import using Ctrl-Shift-I. Import java.util.list and person from this project. Generate the getters and setters for the variables by pressing Alt and Insert. Select Getter and Setter. In the pop-up, select the newly created variables and click on Generate. Write the logic in the search method in person search bean. Call find by surname on person service when only the surname has been entered. Call find by first name on the person service when only the first name has been entered. And call find by first name surname on person service when both fields have been entered. Edit the index.xml page. Give the data table an ID. Name it person list data table. Give the form surrounding the data table an ID. Name it person list form. Update the data table so that it will get its data from the person list on person search bean and places a single element in a variable named person. The data table will populate the variable person with the data of each record as it loops through all the records. Update the first name column to get its data from the first name field on the person object, and update the surname column to get its data from the surname field on the person object. The search button called the test method on person search bin, but make sure it calls the search method now on person search bin. You will see it on the screen at the very top. Go to the web page and press F12 if you use Chrome. You will see the tree view of the page. Find the data table to find the name of the data table. The name of the data table is built up from the component IDs that it is contained in. In this example, the data table is contained in the person list form. This is why the name of the data table is person list form : person list data table. Copy the name of the data table and go back to NetBeans. Make sure the data table will be updated after the search button is pressed by adding the update attribute and give it the full name of the data table. The update starts with a colon. This means the tree will be searched right from the beginning for the name of the component that we are trying to update. Change the input text fields to populate the correct fields on the managed bin. The first name input text should have a value that points to the first name on the managed bin. The surname input text should have a value that points to the surname on the managed bin. Rebuild the application and deploy it. Make sure your MongoDB is running. It should now be possible to search for your name or surname or both, and data will be displayed on the web page. This section explains how to create another Spring managed bin that will be used by the admin screen, the Spring service that is used by the admin screen, and the search screen, and the DAO that supplies the data. We linked it all together and performed the first search. In the next section, we will build the admin screens for the person collection. Welcome to Pact Publishing's video course on building an app UI with PrimeFaces. In this section, we will create the administration screens needed to create and modify the data used by the web application. Click on the Files tab, drill down to Source, Main, Web App. Right-click on Web App and select New and then New Folder. When the New Folder window pops up, enter the folder name as Admin and press Enter. Click on the Projects tab, find index.xml file and copy it to the newly created admin folder. Open the copied index.html file in the admin folder and delete everything between the body tags except the form named person list form and the contents inside the form tag. We created the admin managed bin in a previous tutorial. Open the bin named person admin bin to see the methods that are available. We want to use the find all method. Go back to the index.xml file in the admin folder and edit it. Change the data table to call the find all method on the person admin bin. Remember to add brackets after find all in the XHTML file. Rebuild the project and deploy it. The new page should be available at the URL /admin. The person data page will be used to add, edit and delete the person data. We will create a component that will be configurable and embed the same component on 3 different web pages. The add, edit and delete pages. Of course, there are other ways of doing this, but I would like to show how to create components and reuse them. Go to the Files tab, drill down to Source, Main, Web App. Create a folder in Web App called Resources by right-clicking on Web App, selecting New and then Folder. Create another folder in Resources called Components. Right-click on the Components folder and select New and then Other. The new file window will pop up. Find Java Server Faces in the left list and select JSF Composite Component in the right list box. Click Next. Name the file Person Component on the next screen. Change the folder to Resources/Components. You can also change the folder by clicking on Browse and selecting Components under Resources. Click Finish when done. Open the new file called personcomponent.xhtml. Create 3 attributes under cc::interface called Add, Edit, and Delete. The attributes will be used to display the correct button to be used by the component. First, create the Delete attribute. Set the required to false and the default value to false. This means the attribute is not required and its default value will be false. Copy the delete attribute and create the edit and add attributes. Import PrimeFaces and JSF HTML components in the declaration of the component. Using :p is the standard way of importing PrimeFaces. Using :h is the standard way of importing JSF HTML components. Sticking to these standards will mean it's easier to read other people's source code and easier for them to read yours. Create a panel grid with 4 columns inside the CC implementation tags. Inside the panel grid, add an output text with the value of first name and an input text that will set the value on personadminbean.firstname, and then add an output text with the value of surname and an input text that will set the value on personadminbean.surname. In this example, I'm using h:. That means I'm using the standard HTML components of JSF. If you wanted to use PrimeFaces, you would use p:, and you will have to use different components. Create 3 PrimeFaces command buttons. The first with a value of add and an action of personadminbean.addPerson with brackets, and a rendered of hashtag curly brackets cc.attrs.add. The PrimeFaces command button automatically submits using Ajax. That means when the user presses the button on the screen, it will not reload the whole screen, and it will only send back a small amount of data to the server. The second button should have a value of edit and an action of personadminbean.editPerson with brackets, and a rendered of hashtag curly brackets cc.attrs.edit. The third button, a value of delete and an action of personadminbean.deletePerson, and a rendered of hashtag curly brackets cc.attrs.delete. The methods that we are referring to in the new component don't exist yet. Let's create them. Open personadminbean. Add private properties called first name and surname of type string, and add a private property called selected person of type person. Generate the getters and setters by pressing Alt Insert. Select the option Getter and Setter and select first name, surname and selected person in the window that pops up, and then click on Generate. Create a method called addPerson in PersonAdminBean. The method should construct a person object and populate the first name and surname on the object. Call the save method that is already on PersonAdminBean. Return a string to redirect back to index.jsf page. Create a method called editPerson. Set the first name and surname on the selected person object and call the save method that is already on PersonAdminBean. Return a string to redirect back to index.jsf page. Create a method called deletePerson. Call the delete method on the person service and pass in the selected person object. Return a string to redirect back to the index.jsf page. Now we will create the add, edit and delete pages and reuse the component. Go to the admin folder under web pages. Right-click admin, select new and then other. In the window that pops up, select Java Server Faces in the list on the left and select JSF page on the right. Click Next. Name the page Add Person and click Finish when done. Import the new component in the new web page. Create a JSF form in the body and add the component inside the form. Make sure to also add the attribute add equals true on the component. Copy the page twice. Name the first copy editPerson.xhtml and the second copy deletePerson.xhtml. Edit editPerson.xhtml page and change the attribute from add equals true to edit equals true. Edit the deletePerson.xhtml page and change the attribute from add equals true to delete equals true. Edit PersonAdminBean. Add a method to display the Add Person page. Call the method displayAddPerson. In the method, blank the first name and surname fields and return the string addPerson.jsf. Create a method to populate the first name and surname fields from a person object. Call the method populateScreen. Add a method to display the edit person page. Call the method display edit person. Inside the method, call the populate screen method and pass in selected person. Return the string edit person.jsf. Add a method to display the delete person page. Call the method display delete person. Inside the method, call the populate screen method and pass in selected person. Return the string delete person.jsf. Edit index.xml in admin. Add a column called action. Inside the column, add a p command button with a value of edit and an action to call the display edit person on person admin bean, passing in a person. Add a second p command button with a value of delete and an action to call the display delete person on person admin bean, passing in person. Just below the data table, add a p command button with a value of add and an action to call the display add person on person admin bean. Edit person admin bean. Change the scope from scope request to scope session. Press Ctrl-Shift-I. Make sure to import org.spring-framework.web.application-context.scope_session. Click OK. This is required so that the managed bean will keep the data between the pages. Right-click on the project name and select Clean and Build. When the build is done, click on the Debug Project button. The application will deploy to Tomcat and open the web page automatically. Go to the admin page. This will display all the person data. Clicking on Edit on a line in the data table will display the edit screen containing the person data. Change the data and select the Edit button. The data will be saved and the admin index page will be displayed again containing the new data. Clicking on Delete on a line in the data table will display the delete screen containing the person data. Selecting the delete button will delete the data and display the admin index page again. Clicking on Add will display the Add screen. Fill in some data and click Add. The data will be saved and the admin index page will be displayed again containing the new data. Click around and play with the new screen. This section explains how to create a list page, a reusable component, multiple pages using the same reusable component by just changing an attribute and then linking the list page to the different pages to allow the administrator to add, edit and delete data. In the next section, we will configure the security of Tomcat so that only the administrator can access the admin pages. Welcome to Pact Publishing's video course on building an app UI with PrimeFaces. In this section, we will configure the security of Tomcat so that only the administrator can access the admin pages. Edit the web.xml in the web.inf directory. Add the security constraint to the web.xml. The display name tag is used to document the reason for the security constraint, so it's nothing more than a comment. The web resource collection describes a set of resources to be protected. The resource can be HTTP operations and/or URL patterns. The web resource name is just a comment. Add the URL pattern that we want to secure. Add the HTTP method that we want to secure. The auth constraint lists the roles that will be allowed to access this resource. We will add two roles, an admin and a super admin, that will be able to access this specific URL. The user data constraint specifies how data is protected when transferred between the client and the server. Valid options are none, integral, and confidential. Add the login config to the web.xml. Go to the Services tab and right-click on the Tomcat that is being used by the web application. Stop the Tomcat if it is running and wait for it to stop. Right-click on the same Tomcat and click on Properties. The window that pops up has all the details about the Tomcat we are using. Copy the location of the Catalina home. This is the location that will be used when Tomcat is run from the command line. Run Notepad or any other text editor that you prefer as administrator. Go to the directory that you copied for Catalina Home in the editor. If using Notepad, make sure to select all files. Go to the conf directory. Edit Tomcat users.xml. Create two users. Create a user with username of admin, password of admin, and roles of admin. Create a second user with the username of superadmin, password of superadmin, and roles of superadmin. Save the file. Go back to the Tomcat properties in NetBeans and copy the location of Catalina base. This is the location that will be used when Tomcat is run through NetBeans. Follow the same procedure as described above to edit the Tomcat users.xml. Save the file. Go to NetBeans and rebuild and redeploy the application. Go to the URL /admin. Enter the username of admin and the password of admin. The admin page will then display. This section explained how to configure the Tomcat security when running Tomcat on the command line, and also when running it from NetBeans. We also created multiple roles and secured the admin directory. Please have a look at Spring Security for a more robust security mechanism. In the next section, we will use CSS to make the application look much better and change the pages to extend a base template. Welcome to Pact Publishing's video course on building an app UI with PrimeFaces. In this section, we will modify the application, use JSF templates, and make the whole application look a little nicer using CSS. Click on the Files tab and drill down to Source, Main, Web Pages. Inside Web Pages, create a new folder named Templates by right-clicking on the directory name Web Pages and selecting New and then Folder. Right-click on the new folder and select New and then Other. In the window that pops up, select Java Server Faces in the left list and select Facelets Templates in the right list. Click Next when done. On the next screen, name the template Master Layout. Make sure its folder is the Templates folder. Select the layout style as CSS. Select the radio button next to the layout with a header and a footer. It will be the second radio button. Click Finish when done. This will create the new template file and the CSS files that are required. Add the PrimeFaces namespace to the top of the master layout.xml file in the HTML section. Change the title in the file to Building an App UI with PrimeFaces. Find the word top between the two insert tags and replace it with a div. Give the div a class of logo and enter the text Pact Publishing between the opening and closing div tags. Find the word bottom between the two insert tags and replace it with the words free shipping. It's worth mentioning that when using a template, the template will contain some or all of the following tags, while they are not needed in the inheriting compositions: HTML, FView, HHead, and HBody. Open the newly created default.css file under Web Pages Resources CSS. At the bottom, add a class named .logo and define an image in the class. Add overflow hidden. Add text indent minus 999 pixels so that we can place the text exactly where we want it. Make the width 86 pixels. Make the height 36 pixels. Add background position. Give it a margin of 00022 pixels. Add the background image. We will be using an image located on the Pact Publishing server. Open index.xml file in the root and change it to a composition. by changing the HTML tag at the top and bottom of the file to UI composition. Import facelets in the composition tag. Inherit the template we created in the previous step by adding the template information in the composition. Add the UI define tag around the first hform tag and the last hform tag. The define should have a name of content. This name links directly to the UI insert tag that has been defined in the template. Delete everything else in the file except for the composition tags and the attributes, and of course everything inside the define. Name the define as content. Select the unnecessary HTML above the define and delete it. Select the unnecessary HTML below the define and delete it. Now we need to do the same for all the other pages we created. Change the HTML tag to UI composition, import facelets, inherit the template, add the define tag, and delete everything else. Notice NetBeans will make the tags red if it cannot find an opening and closing tag. As you can see, we're doing the same thing on every page, convert it from a normal page to a UI composition. It's best to just copy and paste the same text from UI composition to UI composition. Then there's definitely a lot less possibility of making an error. Normally when you do your development, you wouldn't be going through this process because you will most likely create your UI composition from the start. We're just doing this because we created HTML pages, so I can show you the process from start to finish. Creating components this way in JSF is definitely a great way of reusing your code. Deploy the new web app. As you can see, the web app looks much nicer with a little bit of CSS. This section explained how to create a JSF template. We changed all the web pages to inherit from the new template, and we configured the template and CSS. This created a much nicer looking web application.